Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
What's going on, guys? You're listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. I am your host on Mondays. On Thursdays, Casey Foreman. Welcome to today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. A whole lot to talk about and discuss in the world of basketball. If you guys had a chance to listen to my last episode, if you didn't, I understand why, but if you did have a chance to listen to my last podcast, I started to discuss a lot of trade rumors that are going on, a whole lot of trade talks going on in the world of basketball in the NBA. Again, we're getting closer and closer to the start of play. We're getting closer to the November 18th NBA draft, November 20th start of free agency, December 1st will be the start of training camp, and then December 2nd, we know now will be the kickoff, the start of next season. So again, we're getting closer and closer to those dates. So obviously, we're having more rumors and talks going on. I think I discussed in my last podcast a lot about Devin Booker and the trade talks a lot. Maybe Drew Holiday as well. So now a couple of different players I want to discuss. Chris Paul. Obviously, had a great season with Oklahoma City, but I want to discuss Chris Paul. He is in a whole lot of trade talks, but with several different teams. One, however, is significantly standing out, and that is Phoenix. So I want to break that down. Does it make sense for Chris Paul? Does it make sense for Phoenix? So Chris Paul in the sweepstakes right now, that there is roughly a Chris Paul sweepstakes, if you will, in the trade market. Russell Westbrook as well, another veteran all-star point guard. Also in trade talks, maybe Houston is looking to move him to the New York Knicks. New York could be interested. Who aren't they interested in, obviously, though? And then the Clippers. The Clippers reportedly showing interest in the all-star point guard in Russell Westbrook. Maybe that is the most surprising of all the trade rumors that I've been hearing, been looking. Maybe Devin Booker wanting out, which apparently isn't much of a surprise, according to Ryan Russillo on The Ringer. But according to this, the Clippers somewhat showing interest in Russell Westbrook. Surprising to me, so are the New York Knicks. I want to break that down. A couple of veteran all-star point guards in trade talks again, the second time. And I want to say the second time. It's been a few times though that these point guards have been in trade talks over the last couple of years. They are yet again. Then I want to go kind of throw it back in time into the history of the NBA a little bit. Isiah Thomas. Okay, Isiah Thomas was on Shannon Sharp's podcast discussing. They ended up discussing at least the top 5 toughest players Thomas ever placed. Obviously, a veteran. Was a veteran, a 12-time All-Star. I think 5-time All-NBA appearance. I think he did have. Point guard for Detroit, Isiah was. So they discussed his top 5 toughest opponents. Jordan ranked number 5 on that list, so I want to break that down. And then Fred VanVleet, okay, going to be a hot commodity on this year's free agent market. He had some comments on JJ Redick's podcast. Okay, a whole lot of podcasting going on right now, right? But Fred VanVleet had some comments on JJ Redick's podcast. regarding this year's free agency as well. So, a lot to discuss this year, a lot of trade rumors, a lot discussing this year's free agency. We're throwing it back to the history of the game a little bit with Isiah Thomas and Michael Jordan, the whole feud between those two guys. And then, again, all the trade talks, especially, though, with those veteran point guards in Chris Paul, in Russell Westbrook. So let's go ahead and break it down, get right into it. The Chris Paul sweepstakes, like I said, like I want to call it, after a comeback season that we saw last year for CP3, obviously leading Oklahoma to the playoffs. He was tied with, I think, Utah and Houston for that fourth seed as far as the record goes. So was tied for the fourth seed, ended up being the five seed, I believe. But make the postseason. They go 7 games with the Houston Rockets in James Harden and Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari, and Dennis Schroeder. Basically, just those are the biggest players on the team. They take James Harden and Russell Westbrook to 7 games, are basically one shot away, one possession away from beating them and moving on and playing the Lakers in the second round. So it was a great season, a comeback season, if you will, for Chris Paul. He was an all-star. He also made all-NBA second team. Okay, so a very impressive season for him. I think he averaged 18 and 7, 18 and 6, I think, this past season for OKC. So again, a very impressive. He was leading that young squad. Excuse me. And again, in the postseason, where there was one a possession away from beating the Houston Rockets and the 2 MVPs they did have. The concerns that were being floated out there in his last couple of games, in his last stretch in Houston, people were throwing out there: is he washed? Is he just going to be injured? Is he washed up and done playing? Those were concerns thrown out there for him. However, after this season, I think those concerns of him being washed are, for now, those concerns are over, have been put to bed. He is going into his 16th year next year. Watch out for that. Again, he has been known for his lingering or small injuries, especially in the postseason. So as he gets older, that is going to be something you want to watch out for, most definitely. But for the most part, a comeback season. The latest team, however, like I said, the Chris Paul sweepstakes, so there are multiple teams interested in Chris Paul, but as of now, the latest team making buzz is Phoenix, the Phoenix Suns, a team I would not necessarily have just predicted to be interested in a guy like Chris Paul, obviously, who doesn't want a guy like that on their team, but ordinarily a franchise, who knows, just a little bit of a surprising move hearing that, man, Phoenix is looking to make a big move for Chris Paul. I discussed it on my podcast last week. The Suns, in order for them to keep Devin Booker long term, they're kind of in the same boat with Giannis in Milwaukee. In order for them to keep him long term, they have got to start winning short term. They have got to start winning ball games, start making the postseason. They came close to making the playoffs this past season in the Orlando bubble. They went 8-0, if you remember. Hard to forget. They go 8-0 and still don't even make the postseason, the play-in game. Okay, they go 8-0, don't even make the play-in game, don't make the postseason, don't know how that works. They did everything they could and still did not make the playoffs. I guess they needed other people to lose more games and whatnot. I know how it goes. Either way, they showed promise at the end of last year, and Devin Booker, if anything, he shined and showed that he is most definitely an all-star point guard in the league. Not point guard, shooting guard in the league, an all-NBA caliber player. He has not. I don't think he has yet to be an all-star quite yet in the league, which is terrible. It's because he plays in Phoenix. That's obviously why. Either way, OKC can now pick from a number of suitors for Chris Paul. It is now, like I said, the Chris Paul sweepstakes with what he did. They have a number of people, in my opinion, who should be and who are lining up to trade for him because, again, adding a guy like Chris Paul to your team immediately, bumps you up multiple notches on the scale of teams. So it gets you, for again, the perfect example is a team like Phoenix, who hasn't been in the postseason for a decade now. Adding a guy like Chris Paul to their roster, in my opinion, gets them to like the fifth seed, the sixth or fifth seed, basically right away, in my opinion. So that is the effect of Chris Paul. in my opinion, that's why there should be more suitors. That's why there should be many suitors, lining up to trade for him. But it would make the Suns. It would take the Suns six. Oh no, they have the 10th round pick. The 10th overall pick. Kelly Oubre Jr. Rubio, maybe more would add it on to that overall. But again, you add him right away. I think you're the 5th or 6th pick right away in the Western Conference. I think overall, Chris Paul adding him to Devin Booker and helping DeAndre Ayton as well. I think he could show both the young Booker and Ayton how to win games, not to just put up big stats like Booker has done. He's put up the stats. He averaged like 25, 26, and 8 assists basically. So he's put up the numbers, yet they can't win the games. Okay, they can't win the game. So I think Chris Paul, a veteran guy who can win ball. Who's a guy who's really good late in games. So I think he can come in and show Booker and Ayton how to win close ball games, could create open looks for both Booker and Ayton. I would love to see I would love to see Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton in the pick and roll. We know how good Chris Paul is in the pick and roll. Him with an all-star caliber center like DeAndre Ayton, a former number 1 overall pick. So yes, Chris Paul with DeAndre Ayton in the pick and roll is something I would like to see. It's definitely something I think would improve DeAndre Ayton's game. It would help Chris Paul. His assist total also finding Devin Booker wide open on the 3-point arc. That's going to happen more than ever, having a guy like Chris Paul on the roster as well as Ayton and Booker. So the guys are going to gravitate more towards Chris Paul as well now, giving more shots to Devin Booker. Obviously, Paul, a guy who can create for others as well as go and get his own shot. So Chris Paul can go get his own shot. And then defensively can be a defensive anchor. We know they struggle defensively; they're nothing great. He can go and be a defensive anchor, help lead them on the offensive side as well as the offensive side as well as the defensive side. So for Phoenix, it's like, hell yeah, why wouldn't you make this move? This is a no-brainer. If OKC will take a call and likes what you're offering, I don't know if there will be something better. There might just be something better unless they like someone who they think they can get with the 10th pick, or they might think they can move up in the draft with the stuff they have with the stuff they get from Phoenix. But if I'm if I'm Phoenix and OKC will take what I'm offering to them. I take it and I run and I get Chris Paul and I make the postseason next year. I get Devin Booker better than what he even is, and that's honestly scary because he's an all-star already, and adding Chris Paul will do nothing but improve his game. Same thing with a guy like DeAndre Ayton, who has all-star caliber potential, so hopefully add him, help him with the pick and roll, help him overall get them more open looks than ever. He's going to create shots for them more than ever as well. So for Phoenix, it's a no-brainer. Of course, you want to add a guy like Chris Paul. For CP3, however, for CP3 is going to Phoenix the right move for you? Are you willing to go to another team? It is better than OKC. You're going to you got a guy like Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, which you don't have in OKC. But it isn't necessarily, in my opinion, a championship contending team or roster. Even if you add Chris Paul, it's a lot better than what they are. They're not necessarily on the outside of the playoff race looking in like they are now, but they're not a contender for the title like the Lakers, the Warriors, in my opinion, the Nets. They're not up there. Maybe I'm wrong on that, and Chris Paul is that good and can excel them that much. But for Chris Paul, he should be chasing a championship, and going to Phoenix does not necessarily mean you're chasing a championship. And again, in my opinion, he would not be winning a championship whatsoever in Phoenix unless he can surprise us all and do another OKC thing and exceed and bring full potential sooner rather than later. But right now, I really don't see that unless Devin Booker takes some MVP level strides, as with Ayton, as with Chris Paul, and he takes steps backward in time. Overall, I don't see that. And as for Chris Paul, if I'm him, I'm eyeing teams like Milwaukee, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Miami, teams already set to win right now. Okay, they're already set to win right now, and then adding me is just going to help our chances even more. So I'm looking at, like I said, Milwaukee, Milwaukee with Giannis, Los Angeles with Anthony Davis and LeBron, Philadelphia with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, Miami with the stacked roster led by Jimmy Butler. So that's what I'm doing if I'm Chris Paul. I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I want to discuss more about what is the best move for Chris Paul. Don't go anywhere, guys. I'm going to be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, guys, welcome back. Like I said, let's continue on discussing the sweepstakes for Chris Paul, if you will. And a team like Phoenix seems very invested and is the latest team, making buzz to trade for the veteran and all-star point guard, all-NBA point guard. But for Chris, for CP3, I'm not convinced that going to Phoenix is the best thing for him and for his legacy. Again, I think he should be chasing championships, the last thing he needs, I think, to solidify his role. He's not going to win an MVP award. The last thing, I think, in his reach is perhaps he just made another All-NBA award, All-NBA team. I don't think that's going to get it done for him either. He needs to win a championship. We know he's an all NBA caliber point guard. We know he's an all-star caliber point guard. The thing on him is he can't win a championship. He has never won a championship, and I think for him that would definitely boost his stock, especially as far as all-time point guards go. If he does get that, even if it does get just the one championship. So, in my opinion, if I am Chris Paul, I'm eyeing teams up, like I said before the break, like Milwaukee, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Miami. He has a much greater chance at getting that ring. With Giannis in Milwaukee. Paul can definitely help the Bucks, lead them offensively and defensively. We know how good they are defensively as well, so he can do nothing but add to their depth defensively. Giannis, obviously the but a defensive player of the year now, two-time MVP, but a defensive player of the year and an MVP in the same season. Only time to do that since MJ and Elijah won, I believe, but we know how good that defense already is in Milwaukee. You add a guy like Chris Paul, who is already a leader in the first place, especially on the court as well. So he's a leader. He's great defensively as well, so he's going to do nothing but help them defensively. And then offensively, as far as what they're looking for, what they're really needing is a guy who can go and create his own shot and knock down big late-game shots, late-game deep shots, especially we know Giannis can get buried or get barricaded out of the paint, out of where he likes to score. So adding a guy like Chris Paul who can stretch the floor a little bit, and as well create for others as well. So adding Chris Paul definitely helps Milwaukee's chances of winning. I think that he solves a lot of their problems overall. Again, he adds to their depth defensively, and then he can make late and deep big shots for you, which you don't necessarily have right now. He can spread the floor, create for others. He checks off a lot of the boxes that you can't check off right now if you're Milwaukee. Also, similar to Phoenix, like I think I said this earlier, similar to Phoenix, Milwaukee has got to start winning right now. They've got to get to a finals. They're winning. They're the number one conference, or seed in the 8th seed over in the NBA, not even in the Eastern Conference. They're the number one seed in the NBA. In general, they're the number one seed, at least they have been over the past couple of years. But similar to Phoenix, they've got to start winning, but even to a bigger extent. They have to make the NBA Finals, in my opinion, in order to keep Giannis, keep him locked up long term. So to keep Giannis, the all generational player that I do in fact think that he could be, that he is. He just won back-to-back MVPs already, so he's on that path to being that all-generational type player. So in order to keep him, you got to start winning. You got to make an NBA Finals. Adding a guy like Chris Paul definitely helps. And if you're Chris Paul, going and playing with a guy like Giannis, the guy who just won, and playing with the MVP and Defensive Player of the Year, yeah, of course that sounds good for a guy like Chris Paul. So I think it sounds great for both parties. For Milwaukee, for CP3, not just in looking at the Phoenix situation where it really just helps Phoenix, not necessarily CP3. And then the other team, like I said, Los Angeles, another team CP3, in my opinion, should be eyeing up. Los Angeles, in my opinion, also needs to be updating their roster if they want a good chance at repeating, going back to back next year. This roster definitely needs an update. Chris Paul brings perimeter defense, which this team does lack at times. He could also create for himself. This team can be much too dependent, obviously, on LeBron James, who creates for everybody, and then Anthony Davis, who can create for himself, but still gets a lot created by LeBron James. So they get another guy who can create for others, and then they get a guy who can create for himself as well. So obviously for Los Angeles, a team that just won the championship, that's going to help Chris Paul's chances at winning a championship. It's going to help Los Angeles and their chance at winning a championship. And in similar to DeAndre Ayton, even to a bigger extent, how great would it be to see Chris Paul and Anthony Davis in a pick and roll situation? Obviously, he's great friends with a guy like LeBron James. So Los Angeles is a clear choice if you're Chris Paul. But is Kuzma, Danny Green, a couple of first-round picks enough to get it done? Philly, a team who is obviously needing some roster adjustments now, with a guy like Daryl Morey in that general manager, in the front office position. They now are in much better position to make moves, make changes. Daryl, a guy known for making moves. So now that they have the move maker in the front office, expect changes to come. And a guy like Chris Paul would definitely help. But this team needs shooting and they need leadership. Chris Paul, obviously, I'm not saying he's Steph Curry or Klay Thompson, but he can make clutch, and he's still a good outside shooter. So he is a very good shooter. He is a good shooter, can knock very good in late game situations, I would say. And then you're getting that leadership factor that you are desperately needing in Philadelphia. You saw Jimmy Butler leave and say, "Man, who was running that place? Who was even in charge? That was the biggest reason I left," said Jimmy Butler. So that has been one of the biggest questions. That's been one of the biggest questions for this team, and adding a guy like Chris Paul would definitely help that, and would definitely put some of those concerns to bed. Again, leadership and shooting, both qualities of Chris Paul, of CP3. They have pieces like Horford, like Tobias Harris, and it would probably take one of, I don't think they would take both, that's a lot obviously, it would take one of, and then probably a lot of picks. Whatever they could do, obviously. So it's going to take that, and obviously adding a guy like Chris Paul to those two young stars in Simmons and Embiid. It's going to help the team chemistry, help them know who's in charge, help give them a guy to look to when they're in doubt. So I think adding a guy like Chris Paul for Philadelphia definitely helps their chances at winning a championship. It definitely, because a team like the Brooklyn Nets are going to be there next year. That's the team to beat. Boston's not going anywhere, but Miami's not going anywhere. So Philadelphia has got to improve. Adding a guy like Chris Paul will do a whole lot for them on and off of the court. And I think they do have enough pieces to get the move done as well. Another team, again, that I've been looking perhaps to make a move, a team that I think definitely Chris Paul would fit, is a team like Miami. Miami as well, a great team. They just were in the NBA Finals. However, this team relies on ball movement for shot creation. So they've moved the ball, which is a great thing for them. Nothing to take away from them. We saw the Warriors. We see them move the ball better and more than anyone, and we've seen great success from them. So I think they do the exact same thing Miami does, but they rely maybe a little bit too much. They don't really have a player to go and get his own shot. The young Tyler Hero can do it, but again, he's going to be in his second year. Jimmy Butler can do it at times, but they rely on him to create at times for others as well. Goran Dragic as well, but also relies on ball movement. So this team relies on ball movement for shot creation. They need a player to create his own shot and then continue to create for others. We saw them on their run to the finals. Obviously, it really does seem like they are simply a piece away. So I would really expect them. I would also expect a guy like Chris Paul to come in and buy into the Miami culture. We know how great they are offensively, especially defensively. I know offensively they have their ceiling, their limits, because it does rely on ball movement, and that can be stopped. And then when a guy has to go create a bucket, create a shot, they don't necessarily have that all the time. So yes, their offense is limited, a very versatile defense. However, in adding a guy like Chris Paul to both sides of the court, again, helps Miami. And I do think Chris Paul could just be the one piece Miami needs to continue running the table in the Eastern Conference and maybe even get it done and win an NBA championship. I don't want to overhype it. If Chris Paul can come in and do what he does, Miami can be healthy and continue to improve. Hey, why couldn't Chris Paul come in and be the missing piece for this Miami team? They would. Again, he has offensively and defensively. I'm not sure, looking at all of the pieces, though, looking at all of the packages right now, what is the best option for Oklahoma City? Who has the best option? Miami doesn't necessarily have to give up a contract piece because they already have cap room. So you simply have to give up, have the right pieces, that OKC wants in that sense. So we'll see. I'm not quite sure who has the best pieces overall. Milwaukee can and should offer everybody not named Giannis Antetokounmpo, offer as many picks as you're comfortable with. Again, if you want to keep a guy like Giannis, it isn't going to be with first round picks. It's going to be by getting all-star veteran players by coming and playing with him. So if you got to move players, if you got to trade all your picks, I say you do so if you're Milwaukee, and you do whatever it takes to get a guy like Chris Paul there, help your chances of winning a championship, help your chances of keeping a guy like Giannis long term as well. Phoenix could offer Rubio, Oubre, and then the 10th overall pick. Would that be enough? Would they have to throw another first round pick in there for the mix as well? So how much would it take for Phoenix if they're as invested as rumors say? Maybe they will go all in and use the number 10th pick, Rubio, Oubre, and then another first rounder on top of that. Maybe that would be enough to get it done. I'm confident that would definitely be enough. Los Angeles as well could offer Kuzma, Green, Cook or Caruso, and then maybe a future first or second round pick. That's all about all Los Angeles could offer, so I'm not quite sure that they even have enough to get it done. Los Angeles, a team obviously that Chris Paul would love to go play in the city of Los Angeles, play with his friend in LeBron James, play with an all-star, all-NBA caliber player and Anthony Davis down low in the pick and roll. So obviously that sounds good for Chris Paul as well. However, not sure if Los Angeles has enough to get it done. It's going to have to take some future cap space, and they do have some cap room already, but not too much. In the coming years they might, but not too much right now. And then the team like Miami, like I said, Miami, has the cap space. How much are they willing to give up for a player when they're already close to winning a championship? That's the question. However, they have the cap space to make it done. Philadelphia, would Tobias Harris and Josh Richardson and some future first round picks be enough to get it done? Not quite sure. really depends, again, what OKC really wants, what player they're high on. Do they really like a young player like Kuzma? Is Chris Paul saying he just wants to go to Los Angeles, just wants to go to Milwaukee? We'll see. Are those factors being played in as well? Again, you have to play those into consideration. Most definitely, it does depend on Chris Paul in that sense. I think they will listen and talk to him and listen and see where he really would rather go. If Phoenix can get this deal done, they better, like I said before, Miami, Milwaukee, Philly gets involved, because they just might have just as good, if not better, packages than Phoenix. Again, Phoenix might have a pretty good package if they're willing to use a decent amount of first picks, as well as the 10th overall pick in the draft with Rubio, with Oubre. So that's pretty enticing, pretty intriguing. Can Phoenix get it done? Can Milwaukee get it done to keep Giannis? Is he the missing piece for Miami? Is he the missing piece for Philadelphia, for Los Angeles to update the roster? Either way, Chris Paul is a hot commodity. Where do you guys think he will land? Leave me a comment in the section, or Twitter, Facebook, wherever you guys get it done. I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, discussing Russell Westbrook, another all-star point guard in trade talks. Don't go anywhere, guys. I'm going to be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Like I said before the break, let's continue talking about all the trade rumors and speculation going on since we're getting closer and closer to the draft, to free agency, to the start of next season as well. So we're getting closer and closer to those dates. It only makes sense for rumors and such to start ramping up. But like I said, another all-star veteran point guard in trade rumors in Russell Westbrook. Is he on the move? There are reports that the New York Knicks and Los Angeles Clippers are interested in the former MVP, triple-double getting former MVP, I should say. But again, the Knicks and the Clippers apparently are showing interest. After being traded last season from OKC, that is obviously long tenured home, then gets traded to Houston for the 1-year stunt, possibly, right? The 1-year stunt. So maybe now he moves on and goes to the Clippers or the Knicks. So very interesting, very intriguing, both very different situations. If you go to the Clippers, it's kind of a win-now situation. If you go to the Knicks, you're kind of a solo act. So both very different teams. But let's go ahead and dive in to both teams. Who has the best package? Where does he fit? Where does he fit in? And again, let's dive right into it. Let's start with the Clippers. The Clippers, obviously, who had an embarrassing end to their season last year. That's no doubt, blowing the 3-1 lead. Obviously, that was embarrassing. They never really seemed to click at 100%. At least it seemed like, in my opinion. I think that's obviously widely known and renounced, but never really clicked. I think the injuries, Chris, both, Kawhi, he load managed all season. Paul George load managed all season. They had injuries to the roster at times. I think they started to click, and then the season stopped for multiple months, and that did nothing but hurt their team chemistry as well. So there are multiple factors that were going into this. But overall, I didn't think talent really had to do with it, really didn't seem to be the issue whatsoever. So now that I'm hearing they're looking to make a trade for an all-star, point guard, all-NBA caliber point guard, and MVP caliber point guard in Russell Westbrook, is kind of like, I didn't think talent really was the issue. I thought team chemistry was kind of the issue, not having enough time together. So if I was the Clippers, I would probably take a different route. But either way, again, in my opinion, talent didn't seem to be the issue for them. Kawhi, Paul George, Montrez, Lou Will, Pat Bev, Marcus Morris, led by Doc Rivers. Yeah, I don't think talent. I think they were very capable of winning an NBA championship. They simply came up short, blew a 3-1 lead. Yet they are already maybe wanting to make another big move. It would add to their defensive. Not defensively, what am I saying? But adding Russell Westbrook to this team, again, I don't think solves a lot of their issues. If anything, I think it adds more issues to their team chemistry, which is already an issue, like I said. So, and acquiring him, don't think you're putting together some Kawhi Leonard, Russell Westbrook, Paul George thing. And if you do, it's going to be just those three players and nobody else. You're going to have no Lou Will, no Montrezl Harrell. That's if the Rockets will take Montrezl Harrell and sign him after that. So you're going to have to give up a lot to get a guy who just might add to more team chemistry issues. And we already saw the Russell Westbrook, Paul George thing in Oklahoma City did not exactly pan out. We saw maybe 2-3 consecutive first-round exits for that. So I think I saw enough of the Paul George, Russell Westbrook show. Okay, I saw 3 consecutive first-round exits. Don't want to see any more. So again, adding Russell Westbrook, I don't quite understand that. Russ though, and Kawhi, because it would take giving up Paul George to make the trade work. Also, I should say, breaking news. I just saw on my break. I completely forgot to bring it up. Russell Westbrook apparently wants out of Houston. He is done of Houston. He's looking for his new home, his next organization, his next team, I should say. And apparently James Harden on the opposite end is locked in, wants to stay in Houston. He's a franchise guy, isn't going anywhere as far as he can control. So Russell Westbrook apparently wants out. So now these trade rumors aren't necessarily rumors anymore. Russell Westbrook wants out. Where will he go? The Clippers, again, perhaps now may be a real landing spot, not just a hypothetical. This could be a legitimate place we could see him playing. Does it work, though? Does it fit? That is the biggest question, because, again, you probably have to give up Paul George to make the contract situation work. More than likely, you gotta give up Paul George to get Russ and the contract that comes with him. But would Kawhi and Westbrook fit? Obviously, Westbrook very ball dominant, gets his own shot, can create for others. But again, there has been controversy on some of his rebounds, some of his assists, some of stat padding for him. So he is very ball dominant. Kawhi could be a little similar in a way, not stat padding in any way, but not a big passer. Can create his own shot. That's kind of what he does. He creates his own shot, not a big creator for others. So they're kind of similar in that way. Do you want to put two, I don't want to say selfish players, but two selfish-like players Kawhi has shown capable of sharing the ball? Kawhi is not a selfish player by any means, but two ball-dominant players together that hasn't really shown to work in Houston as of right now. I wouldn't really see Westbrook and Kawhi meshing and fitting right now. Maybe other people are saying things. I don't want to say it wouldn't fit because they're so talented and they're similar players, so maybe they could work. I'm not quite sure. Again, you already have your team chemistry issues. Adding a guy like that is going to do nothing but add. It will not help, okay? It will not help. That their issue, it will do anything but make an issue a larger issue for that team. Does it seem like the Clippers, in my opinion? Remember the Rockets in the Golden State era with Kevin Durant? They were doing a whole lot of moves, getting Chris Paul, trading Clint Capella, all the moves they were doing, getting Russell Westbrook. So that they've been making moves to win championships, and it seems like they've kind of been swinging and missing. And I hate to say it, but are the Clippers becoming the new Rockets? Okay, are they becoming the new Rockets? Are they taking all of these moves, all these chances just to swing and miss? I hate to say it. I don't want that to be, because they've spent their future on getting a guy in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. So you hope that isn't the case. Okay, you hope they didn't waste their future on second round exits, blowing 3-1 leads. But it kind of seems like they could be, if they make this move and it's another whiff, they could be becoming the next Houston Rockets in that way. Maybe the Houston Rockets are getting rid of that cliche, of that name, that title, and maybe start to move on to other things, better paths, right? So maybe the Clippers are taking on that description from the Rockets. They keep trying new things to win championships. Does not quite work out for them. But again, the fact that Russell Westbrook, the fact, we're going to have to change the show a little bit. I cannot believe he wants out of Houston already. I mean, I can't believe it, because it obviously has not worked whatsoever. Getting gentlemen swept, going 7 games with the OKC Thunder, despite you guys having more talent. You guys are obviously the 2 MVPs on your roster. You guys had championship hopes, and then you go 7 games in the first round and get gentlemen swept in the second round. So I understand. I should say I don't want to say I don't understand why Westbrook wants out. Yes, it doesn't seem like a good fit for him in Houston, but again, that's his good friend in Harden. Maybe, I don't want to say it's locker room issues. Who knows what the real issues is? Maybe he's just a smart basketball player, and he sees that it doesn't fit, and he's ready to move on. Maybe he's just being smart about this, and he's saying, hey, let me out of here. I'm not going to waste my time. I'm going to go try to win and do other things elsewhere. So maybe he's just being the smart, respectful guy, and he's like, hey, let's not waste any more time, and let's move on, and let's get something. You get something for me, and I'll go get somewhere else and add to them elsewhere, right? So I can believe it, but it's very surprising. And but ultimately, I do think it makes sense. But where will he go? Will the Clippers be the next landing spot for Russ? Is he going home to Los Angeles, to California, where I believe he's from? Yeah, he went to UCLA. He's from LA. So will he come home? Will he come home, or will he go to a place also in the rumor field, in the market for him, like the New York Knicks? Okay, like the New York Knicks, a very different situation, like the Clippers, who obviously are in a win now, looking to win a championship. Okay, and obviously, yes, the Clippers need to upgrade the point guard position. They need to upgrade at that position, but they also need size, and they need someone to combat Nikola Jokic, Anthony Davis, Joel Embiid. So they need size, I think, more than anything. So do you go out and get a franchise point guard when I don't know, when you already have team chemistry issues? Not quite sure. They need a point guard, but they need size a little bit more. But for the Knicks, it's a different situation. This, for the New York Knicks, going out and getting a guy like Russell Westbrook, this is an attempt for the Knicks to become relevant once again. Again, they haven't been relevant since Carmelo was traded, since Porzingis was traded, since Patrick Ewing was on the team, quite honestly, getting to the conference finals and NBA finals. So they haven't been relevant in a very long time. It is a big city, though. The city, a city looking for stars, most definitely. They keep swinging and missing. They lost in the draft lottery once again this year, similar to last year. They aren't getting any real free agent interest. Yet again, they swing and miss last year with KD, Kyrie, Anthony Davis, Zion as well, with the whole draft lottery thing. So they've been, somewhat swinging and missing recently, and it isn't really looking good. And for them to go out and get New York, I actually think, despite them not being in the win now situation for them, and quite honestly for Westbrook, it might make sense for both parties, for both groups, Westbrook and the Knicks. He can go to New York now, okay, right? Westbrook can go to New York. He can put up monster numbers. He can continue on with the whole triple-double path, maybe average a whole triple-double for a fourth season, perhaps, right? So he continue to put on a show, put up monster numbers in the big city, be a solo act, if you will, in the big city, try to attract other people maybe to come play with you, perhaps. I'm not quite sure. Maybe that's New York's plan. Either way, put up monster numbers as a solo act in New York. Grow your brand, grow your all-time stock in the New York Knicks jersey. What's up? There's not much better jerseys, but much better cities to do it in than New York. Make a bunch of all-star teams, make the playoffs, maybe make more first or second round exits for you in the Eastern Conference. But still, you're not going to be the dominant team, but you're going to have some dominant performances, some dominant stat lines. And what else? What would be better for Westbrook, quite honestly? Would it be better for him to go and win a championship with the Clippers? Or would it be better for him to go and have more years of triple-doubles in New York? I'm not quite sure. I'm leaning, the championship. We know how big a championship is. So obviously a championship might mean more. But hey, as far as all-time stock, you're growing your own personal brand. Years of triple-doubles, of big stat lines in a big city like New York would definitely help. I'm leaning with the whole title thing, but again, imagine the stat lines. What do you guys think? What do the fans think? Do you think he'll end up with a team like the Clippers, a team trying to win a championship, or will he end up on a team like the Knicks, like the Hornets even, who've been maybe in the rumor field, a team that really isn't in position to win now, more looking to be relevant because they haven't been in so long? Where do you guys think he ends up? But either way, him saying he wants out of Houston now officially, it's going to be sooner. It's going to be before the start of next season. We're going to see Russell Westbrook in a different jersey. Can't wait to see it. Where do you guys think he lands? Where is the best fit? I want to take my last break of the podcast. Coming back, a couple things to discuss. Isiah Thomas, where he ranked Michael Jordan as far as all-time competitors. And then Fred VanVleet regarding this year's free agency. Don't go anywhere, guys. I'm going to be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, guys, welcome back. Like I said before the break, let's take a look back at NBA history, okay? Isiah Thomas was on Shannon Sharp's podcast recently, and they started to discuss, obviously, there's a little bit of a feud between him and the great Michael Jordan, so obviously that is going to come up. But yes, all-time great Piston, all-time great point guard, Isiah Thomas on all-time great Shannon Sharp's podcast, and again, somehow, some way, MJ gets brought up when you know it's going to, when you're talking to a guy like Isiah Thomas who has beef with a guy like Michael Jordan. So obviously that's going to get brought up. And if you watched The Last Dance, if you didn't even know their beef prior, but you watched The Last Dance, you know that this duo, this tandem, they got beef. Okay, you don't even want to call them a duo or tandem. It's that deep. It goes that bad. Okay, so there's no reason to really think that this, in my opinion, what Isiah said in this sense was hate or trash talking him in any sense. But there's nothing but hate between those two guys, in MJ and in Isiah Thomas as well. And this obviously comes from the Bulls Pistons rivalry in the 80s and the 90s as well. But this obviously comes from them playing each other in those postseason matchups, those bad boy Pistons against Michael, beating him down, making sure that he could not beat them on his own. But, Thomas, like I said, was asked, who were the toughest 5 players that you ever played against? Who were the toughest 5, your toughest 5 opponents? His response, number 1 had to be Magic Johnson. He said, so Magic was number 1, Kareem was number 2, Larry Bird was number 3, Dr. J, he put Dr. J at number 4, and then he put Mike, MJ, at number 5. So maybe a little bit of a sneak diss there, putting Dr. J over them, just because even in the postseason, he had more rivalry games against MJ and the Bulls against Dr. J. So putting Dr. J above him, maybe just because of the 80s more, in fact, or the beginning of his time, maybe. But still, that's a little bit of a sneak diss, putting Dr. J above him. I completely, though, my main point that I want to get to here in this segment regarding Isiah and his comments is, I understand putting guys like Magic, Kareem, even Larry, obviously Larry Bird. I think he could even be number 1 on this list, but I completely understand those 3 guys being ahead of MJ on this list because of what he did, and I don't think, like I said, this was an intentional shot at MJ. We know there's beef between them, but I do not think this was an intentional shot. If you look at the 80s especially, who Isiah and the Pistons were matched up with and who they were competing with, for the most part, it wasn't just Michael Jordan and the Bulls. It wasn't mainly Michael Jordan and the Bulls even. So for him to be at number 1 would be foolish, and we know at that point in Michael's career, he had not at that point taken off and had the success he had later in his career. Maybe the individual accolades, sure, but definitely was not at the point he was later in the career. Did not have the team, obviously. That's the biggest factor. He did not have the team he had later on in his career either, but it makes nothing but sense for MJ to be lower on this list, not to be number 1, because of, again, who he played in the 80s. It wasn't just the Bulls and MJ. MJ was a small part of it at the time. It was a lot of the Boston Celtics, Larry Bird, and those Celtics, that dynasty who MJ also could not get past. So it was Detroit and Boston, battling in the conference finals, battling to who would eventually play Los Angeles in the finals. So it was Detroit versus Boston, and then who was going to go play Los Angeles, basically. So it was a lot of Celtics, a lot of Lakers. So it makes nothing but sense for him to put Magic, for him to put Kareem, for him to put Larry Bird ahead, for him to put Dr. J, though, again, that's a little laughable. That I think could be a little bit of a shot to Michael. I'm all for it, though. They got a beef already. You might as well take your shot while you got your chance, while you're talking about him, right? MJ took a sure amount of shots at Isiah Thomas in The Last Dance documentary, so why not take a shot while you got the platform, right, while you're talking about the guy? It makes sense. Maybe, if anything, I would put Mike at number 4 over Dr. J, but I'm all for Bird, Kareem, and Magic being over him, especially because of what they did, again, in the 80s. Again, all the matchups they had against Boston, again, playing Los Angeles in the finals. It makes a whole lot of sense. Michael definitely deserves to be on this list. Again, I would put him over Dr. J for sure. Makes sense for Bird, Magic to be a lot higher, or be higher than him. I'm not going to discuss what else Isiah Thomas had to say regarding Michael Jordan. He did also have to say that he was dominant over Michael Jordan. No, yes, if you look, I wouldn't say you were dominant, Isiah. Yes, your team was dominant over Michael's team, but if you're looking at the head-to-head matchups, the numbers, Michael was dominant over you, Isiah Thomas. I don't want to get into it. But he's throwing shots, and I got to break it down a little bit, right? I don't want to get too much into it, but no, Isiah Thomas, you were not dominating Mike. Your Piston team was dominating his Bull team, yes, most definitely, but you were not dominating him. Okay, that's all I got to say about the matter. But yes, I agree with him saying Bird, Magic, Kareem were tougher competitors for him at the time, because MJ at the time was not the toughest competitor, because his team was not at that point like the Celtics were, like the Lakers were. So it makes sense. I'm on Isiah's side for that, but not on his side for the whole dominant crap that he was saying. So I'm not all for that stuff though, Isiah. Not for that. Let's transition now. Let's transition from talking about NBA history, going back from the 80s. Let's go now to current time, discuss this year's free agency. Fred VanVleet going to be a hot commodity on this year's free agency, in my opinion. The one-time champ. He's coming off a 17.6.5 assist, almost 40% from the three-point line as well. So he's coming off a very good season. He is an NBA champ. He's been there, done that. So of course he's going to be a hot commodity, like I said, on the free agent market. He did very recently appear on JJ Redick's podcast. I think it's called An Old Man and the Three or something. He calling himself old. We know how good JJ Redick is at shooting the three ball. So I know somewhat of a creative, podcast there. I think that's the name of the podcast. At least pretty creative there. I'll give him, credit where credit is due. Either way, I know Fred goes on the podcast and he spoke about this year's free agency, and up until this point, he's been relatively quiet. Rightfully so. He's been focusing on the Raptors and their season. They had championship hopes. They were hoping to go back-to-back this year. So rightfully so, he was focused on this year with the Raptors. However, now he said, I'm willing to be public about what I want to do this year for the first time. He spoke with JJ about his plans for this year's free agency. And for Toronto fans, if there are any Toronto Raptor fans out there listening, I do want to say it is not looking good for you. He said, yes, I have won a championship. Okay, he's won, I will paraphrase here, he's won a championship. He's proved, in his opinion, that he is all about winning a championship in Toronto, not being a lottery pick, him overcoming all the many challenges he's had to face in his career. He said he's never lost anywhere he's gone. He's nothing but a winner in his opinion. So he said he has nothing left to prove in that sense. What he is looking for, which is kind of what we expect for a young player who's only played a handful of years in the league, he is looking to get paid. In his words exactly, he is, quote, trying to get paid. So rightfully so. Again, he's won a championship. He's got some hardware now. He's coming off a 17-6 season, his best season so far. His stock has never been higher. So of course he's going to go out there and trade a payday, go out there and try to get as much as he can. He is yet to get that bag, if you want to say it in that way. So of course he's going to go out there and try to get it. Again, his stock is at an all-time high. In my opinion, he's looking at teams like perhaps like a team like New York. If they don't end up getting a guy like Russell Westbrook, perhaps they overpay and max out a guy like Fred VanVleet, whose potential is high. Okay, he said it himself. He's looking to go to a different place perhaps and have a larger role, maybe blossom in that larger role. So he thinks his best basketball is still in front of him. That is good to hear. He's not content with what he is in his career and stuff like that. He's still good, but now he's chasing the money, and he says he's looking to be even better in a larger role. But again, he's looking to be in a larger role with Toronto not having so much salary cap, them just extending Pascal Siakam, perhaps wanting to sign back free agents who are Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, also Fred VanVleet. So three big pieces of the team. All three are free agents. That is not good if you are Toronto. They're going to have to make some decisions, but when it comes down to it, I don't think they have enough ultimately to get a guy in Fred VanVleet, the number he should be targeting. The Toronto Raptors should not have enough to have that salary cap available, especially with the salary cap decreasing this upcoming year. So it makes sense. He's only played 4 years. His stock is at an all-time high. He just averaged 17-6. He also said, like I said, he's ready for that bigger role. So maybe that means he's ready to leave Toronto, get again a starting franchise role. Perhaps he's been a bench piece for Toronto at times as well. So he's looking for a bigger starting role. If I'm New York, I go out there and I get him. They overpaid for Marcus Morris. I know you trade him for a first-round pick and that worked out, but they've overpaid before. If I'm overpaying for anybody, it's Fred VanVleet, and I don't even know if that would be an overpay. So I go out there, I get him. If I'm New York, I have the cap space to do so. The Miami Heat as well. Watch out for Miami. They have the cap space. If they don't luck out and end up trading, don't feel like giving up anything to get a guy like Chris Paul, they could end up, using the salary cap they do have to sign a very capable guy in Fred VanVleet. So watch out for Miami, New York, Atlanta as well. Again, he's looking for a bigger role. They could offer him a large role at that shooting guard position, perhaps that guard position, max him out as well. So they have a great deal of salary as well in Charlotte. So maybe we see him go, or sorry, Charlotte even. I didn't even think about the Hornets. The Hornets, Atlanta, the Heat, New York. I think all of them have enough cap space to get it done. He's looking to have a larger role, perhaps on a smaller team, make a big contract, make a big dent in that salary cap. So if anything, it's not looking good for Toronto fans. And rightfully so, though. Fred VanVleet, you've won a championship. You're about 4 years in. It's time for you to go out there, make a bigger name for yourself, get some money, make yourself set for the future. And, go out there, make a bigger name for yourself, have a larger role, maybe on a smaller team. Nothing is wrong with that after especially already winning a championship so soon in your career. So props to him. I do nothing but support him in this year's free agency, and I am looking forward to see what he decides to do, what decision he ends up making. Where do you guys think he will land? A lot of questions about that today. Where do you think Chris Paul will land? Where do you think Russell Westbrook will land, who obviously now has just said he wants out of Houston? Breaking news before you, in fact. So that's interesting. Where do you think Russell's going to end up? Where do you think Chris Paul's going to end up? And where do you think Fred VanVleet on the free agent market is going to end up? He's the only free agent out of the guys I've been talking about, so it's all up to Fred. Where will he decide to go? Where do you guys think is the best decision for him? That's going to be it, though, guys, for the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Thank you all for your continued support here at GSMC. Go check us out on Facebook, on Twitter. Go leave us a comment or review on whatever platform you are listening on. Again, we're getting closer and closer to the start of the season, to the NBA draft, to free agency, so expect more and more news, more and more rumors to leak out. Again, Russell Westbrook, he wants out of Houston. It's breaking news. We will see as days go on. I'm guessing we're going to have more and more news for potential suitors, potential trade suitors for him. So I can't wait to see how that pans out. Where will Russell end up? I'm hoping on my next podcast, perhaps on Monday, perhaps to have more information on that. Again, though, that's it for this week on GSMC. I'll see you guys on Monday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.